sides of the service category and just putting it, putting it on one side rather than the other is detrimental to me compared to just slightly going on the other side as far as consideration of the service. Type of services, the type of professions, the professional services that we do, and to see that it really does belong in the professional category, therefore, close the building. But I do understand, that it's on paper, it's not comfortable for everyone at this time.
I want to thank you for coming down here and explaining your service. I've actually been in there before. You have a great business. Thanks for staying in the town of Farragut. And I think this is just an example of many things we run across on this board, but probably more so on the Planning Commission, is an evolution of language and businesses and so forth. So this is, in my opinion, another example that I agree with Alderman Markley and Mayor McGill. I don't have any problem with this. So, we'll do what we can to. But there's a lot of other people, but we'll work to make haste.
Don't feel bad. I asked her, and don't feel bad. I asked everyone, do you know what an esthetician is? And they look at me like, oh, I don't know. It's like they put you to sleep before surgery. Yeah. No, they don't. And that's not uncommon. Many of the new professions that are integrated, are not familiar with all of us. I'm of an age that, gosh, I would say in 2002 was really the beginning of the merge between the Medi-Spa concept and adding, additional treatments and services. That's really expanded over the years. This last year we saw a 278% growth in the medical spa category, if you categorize that. And there's not an official category. That's why it's help create, there's definitions out there, but there's not one particular national or statewide definition that qualifies a Medi-Spa as a one. It's just whatever the owner decides to blend in both the categories. That's, what works for that business and that community. But I would be happy to help in that category, of course, and help you.
As we're doing this.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
We can do a couple of things that would expedite it slightly, but it won't be a miracle. Are you okay with that?
But, anything at all, obviously right now I'm looking at how long it might take to get to the end, of the approval process and to be voted in, and obviously that's going to take months.
I'm going to defer to our town administrator for something definitive on that.
Well, I think at the Planning Commission meeting this month, I believe it's for discussion, which will then mean another Planning Commission meeting the following month to actually approve something to then send to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for 2 readings. And the issue that the board has is that you only have, you're going to talk about it tonight, but you're probably going to have 1 meeting in November and then 1 meeting in December. And so we can certainly expedite anything that we can to try to speed that along faster. But getting from Planning Commission to Planning Commission is probably the longest length of time. From the board's perspective, you meet every 2 weeks. So we can try to push to get to the first reading for the board and then plan on the public hearing on the second reading. I'd have to look at the dates, but we can try to do that as quickly as our process will allow after the Planning Commission hears it.
I suspect that, what was your last name? I'm sorry. Handel. I suspect that Ms. Handel's costs are probably running somewhere around $100 a day on this thing, if not more, while she's hung out there. I think there was an inadvertent situation that's developed here. There's maybe a little bit of weakness in our ordinance because we haven't kept up with the times. I think we all agreed it's a pretty innocuous use, that it's not something that's going to be a problem getting through the process. But I question whether it's right, proper, considerate, or whatever to penalize, mishandle while we work out this weakness in our ordinance. I'm wondering if there isn't something, because I think everybody agrees, and I think the Planning Commission is going to see this the same way, if we couldn't give her some kind of a temporary stay of execution, let her proceed while this works its way through the process to keep from placing such a burden and hardship on this business and on this citizen.
Well, I'm not sure what other options that she would have if our ordinances do not allow something to actually be, because they don't allow for this meta spa concept, or they don't allow for the different things that she would have that not only are office but also commercial type uses, then it's not allowed right now. And so the question would be, what could we try to do to expedite this process for her to make it go a little quicker?
Well, are we sure that it's not allowed? Because the ordinance addresses something that she is not. And the fact that there is not a definition in our ordinance doesn't necessarily mean that she's in violation of the ordinance. Just we have kind of a gray area there, and I'm wondering if we can't make some sort of a temporary order to proceed until we can get caught up on this, so she's not unduly penalized because of something that's not really her fault. I know Nick and Noah Myers, we all know them. They're confident businessmen, and I think they acted in good faith. I'm sure she's acted in good faith, and I'm hoping that we can be reasonable as well as strict in interpretation of our code, but recognize that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and we do have occasional gray areas, and if we couldn't possibly address this in such a way that doesn't place an undue burden on a citizen and a business in our town.
One of the questions I would ask is, based on what I've told you, where do you put me? What kind of business am I?
I got a phone call and a letter from your counsel, Mr. Seymour, and have spoken with staff about this and studied our definitions. And the way we get these things frequently where what somebody is going to do or plans to do or wants to do technically doesn't fit, but they didn't find out about it until after they had committed to do something. We see that at the Board of Zoning Appeals pretty often. So the question becomes, and I'll get to your question in just a second, but the question becomes, how do we reconcile the fact that we have these regulations that we have adopted for people to live by, and the fact that for one reason or another someone proceeds on the basis of a misunderstanding of what they provide for. And that's a tough position, and I'm probably to blame for a lot of this, but I tell the staff, if we've got a regulation, that if we don't follow our regulations that we adopt, then we might as well not have any. Because if we don't follow them, then we're accused of selective enforcement, and then it creates a legal problem for the town. Now, getting to your question specifically, we have decided sometime whenever this zoning ordinance was created to allow professional, personal, and business services to take place in the commercial 1 zone. And we have only provided in the office zone for professional services. So when we looked at this, we look at the definition of personal services, and it is pretty clear that establishments primarily, and the word primarily is in there, engaged in providing services involving the care of a person. And it goes on to say, or her personal goods or apparel. Such activities include barber, beautician, and then it goes on shoe repair and things for furnishings, for clothing. And then both of our sections say, or other similar activities as defined by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I suppose there's one alternative would be to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which has the authority to interpret our ordinances, and ask them to interpret this in the way that you want it interpreted. Part of our problem is you hadn't started this new business. Now, I don't know if it's going to be different than the business you have now, but we've looked at your website, and your website lists hair services, nail services, skin care, massage, makeup, makeovers. It doesn't, and there's nowhere in here does it say anything about medical. And I realize you're moving, and you're going to
have a new website too.
And you're going to do. You do. Well, I got this one fairly recent.
Yeah, well, we don't have it up yet. It's
Okay.
created by a new company that we're working with, yes.
So.
And I have, I brought all our licenses, for the people who do the permanent cosmetics, and it concerns me because our current website should have our permanent cosmetic gals thing pop up. If that didn't, then I need to double check that. But I have the physicians. I've got Dr. Sawyer's information that he, comes in.
How much would he be there? I mean, would he be there?
Well, right now he's not as much. That's one of the other frustrations of this is we're steamrolling into kind of a new, obviously, I didn't mention this before, but we're remodeling in the sense of, obviously, we're redesigning our format, more private suites, treatment areas, and so forth. It's a much smaller facility, more focused on the treatment-oriented and better use of space, quite frankly. The physician is wanting, currently he's a regular doctor, but the location where he is currently practicing, as a physician, they will not allow him to do, the treatments, the lasers and the peels and so forth that he does. It's a conflict of interest, and that was a confusion that happened. So he is waiting, to proceed with additional treatments. He wants a place to put his equipment that can be safely locked up and protected and so forth, so that he can offer those when he's not needed at the doctor's office. Permanent cosmetic specialist, she's at our facility as well and does permanent cosmetics, massage.
Say permanent cosmetics, does that mean it's not just cosmetics, it's
like eyeliner.
Okay.
Someone wants that permanently, or eyebrows, and then she does corrective work as well.
So it's more permanent, not just putting it on.
That's right, it's
okay.
Permanent.
Well, my understanding from discussions with the staff is that the way the Renaissance is set up, it was divided this way because there are residences behind the place, and the lesser intrusive zone was put up against the neighborhood, while the commercial zone was set down farther away in order to take into account the potential higher traffic for the people that would be just behind this. And so, we have interests that we have to consider everywhere, and that was done for a particular reason. Mr. Smoke and I had talked about in an attempt to figure out a way to accommodate what you're trying to do, and in our heart of hearts, we just couldn't figure out a way to do it other than to follow the procedure that we have started on to maintain the integrity of our ordinances. And I understand that, I guess I'd ask you a question. What do you think primarily your business is going to be made up of? Is it going to be made up of hair and nail, or is it going to be primarily this medical aspect that's going to involve the doctor? Because I've understood that your primary business was what would be clearly a personal service, and that you had this other you were hoping to develop, and if it developed, then maybe it would become a bigger part.